Jimmy Carter, who turned 98 last year, became the oldest living U.S. president in history after the passing of George Bush, who died in late 2018 at 94. The nation's 39th president has kept a low public profile in recent years due to the coronavirus pandemic, but has continued to speak out about risks to democracy around the world, a long-time cause of his. Carter beat brain cancer in 2015, but faced a series of health scares in 2019, and consequently underwent surgery to remove a pressure in his brain. A peanut farmer and U.S. Navy lieutenant before going into politics, Carter, a Democrat, eventually served one term as governor of Georgia and the President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. Carter governed amid Cold War pressures, turbulent oil markets, and social upheaval over racism, women's rights, and America's global role. Carter was the first president to use a nickname Jimmy when he was sworn into office. Carter can speed read at a rate of 2,000 words a minute. These days, after a series of short hospital stays, former President Jimmy Carter has decided to receive hospice care at home after several short hospital stays, according to a statement from the Carter Center Saturday. He has the full support of his family and his medical team. The Carter family asks for privacy during this time and is grateful for the concern shown by his many admirers. But at the same time, former U.S. President Carter feels that his death is approaching, so he wrote his will and delivered it to his family, and from close sources, we were able to obtain an overview of what came in that will. Let's go to the details. Jimmy's will included personal matters related to his family and how to divide his heirs among his children and grandchildren. It also stated that a large part of his wealth would be donated to cancer treatment centers. He recommended that the American people advocate and stand beside Democratic President Joe Biden. He ended his will with a few words, "I shall rest here in peace after a long life of struggle." Early life. Jimmy Carter was born on October 1, 1924, in Plains, Georgia. He was the first president to be born in a hospital. As a child growing up in Georgia, Carter helped with chores on his father's peanut farm. The schools he attended were segregated or separated by race, meaning black children attended one school and white children attended another. Carter's parents encouraged him to play with both black and white kids. However, his mother and nurse treated African American patients, which was unusual for white nurses to do at the time. After high school, Carter attended the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. Soon after he graduated, Carter married Rosalind Smith, a friend of one of his sisters, and began a career in the U.S. Navy working as a nuclear submarine engineer. From farmer to governor. After his father's sudden death in 1953, Carter left the Navy to manage his family's farm in Georgia. Around this time, many black people across the country started demanding that they receive the same rights as white people. This was called the Civil Rights Movement. In Carter's hometown of Plains, an organization called the White Citizens Council formed to fight back against the Civil Rights Movement. Carter was the only white man in Plains who refused to join. Some white people boycotted his farm in protest, but Carter still wouldn't join the group. Upset by racial discrimination in Georgia, Carter decided to run for the Georgia Senate and served as a state senator from 1963 to 1967. During his time in the Georgia Senate, Carter helped repeal or end laws that kept black people from voting. In 1970, Carter was elected governor of the state, a position he held until 1975. In his inaugural speech, he said he would work to improve civil rights and declared that the time of racial discrimination is over. As governor, Carter increased the number of African American staff members in Georgia's government by 25%. He also hung portraits of Martin Luther King, Jr., and other important black Georgians in the state's Capitol building. Before then, Only portraits of white Georgians had hung in the building. The all-white group, the Ku Klux Klan, even protested Carter's action. Running for president. In 1974, Carter announced that he would run for president in the 1976 race. At first, no one took him seriously because he was mostly unknown outside his home state of Georgia. So Carter published a book about his life called Why Not the Past, to introduce himself to voters. He also positioned himself as a political outsider who was scandal-free, a message that many people liked. Former President Richard Nixon had resigned from office just a year earlier after being involved in illegal activities, and most citizens were tired of feeling bad about the country. Carter won the Democratic Party nomination and eventually the presidency. In a close race, he defeated then President Gerald Ford, who was appointed to the post only because Nixon had resigned. In 1977, Carter became the country's 39th president. A rough start. Voters liked that Carter was an outsider, someone who hadn't been involved in national politics or the recent presidential scandal. But once he was in the White House, being an outsider made things hard. Congress didn't take him seriously and often refused to help pass his bills. Carter also had to deal with a bad economy at the beginning of his presidency. Many people couldn't find work, and inflation or the increase in the prices of goods and services over time was high. That meant that the prices increased so much on everyday items like bread, eggs, and gas that many people couldn't afford them. Bright spots. One of the Carter's biggest concerns was how much energy people used. He thought US citizens were using too much to light their homes and drive their cars, and that the country was becoming dependent on oil from other countries. In fact, this was one reason gas prices were so high during this time, because oil-producing Arab countries imposed an oil embargo on the United States, meaning they stopped providing oil to the nation. These Arab countries were upset that the United States supported Israel in an ongoing war with some of the oil-producing Arab nations. These actions helped Carter earn the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. All the three other presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and Barack Obama, have received this honor. Carter is the only one to be recognized for his achievement after he left the presidency. Carter has also been called America's Green President, thanks to his forward-thinking environmental actions and concern about climate change.